Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Sports Legends of the Carolinas. I'm your host, Scott Fowler, sports columnist for the Charlotte Observer, where I've worked since 1994. And as always in this podcast, I'm going on the road to seek out some of my very favorite sports legends. In this episode, I'm talking to Jimmie Johnson, one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history. There are 3 drivers at the very top of the all-time NASCAR Cup Series champion standings, each of whom won 7 season titles apiece. They are Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt Sr., and Jimmie Johnson. Johnson is now 48 years old, the same number he made famous for Hendrick Motorsports. He's still competing in a select series of events for Legacy Motor Club, including the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway on May 26th. This interview with Johnson, where he spoke about racing, family, and the 2 times he thought his life might be over, was recorded in Daytona Beach, Florida.
And that was one of 2 moments where I felt like my life was coming to an end.
This Sports Legends episode is sponsored by Queen City Audio, Video, and Appliances, the Carolinas' largest independent appliance dealer. With their price match guarantee and same-day or next-day delivery, why shop anywhere else? Queen City Audio, Video, and Appliances aims to raise $50,000 toward the renovation of a new kitchen at the Ronald McDonald House of Greater Charlotte. So upgrade your home and help provide the comforts of home to families in need. And now it's Jimmie Johnson on Sports Legends of the Carolinas. Jimmie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Scott.
This is really going to be a thrill for us, so I'm really glad to talk to you. And I think the first question I'd like to talk to you about is why you're still doing it at age 48, having accomplished so much. What keeps you going?
I love competing. I love being in the race car. I knew that in 2020 that my drive to be on the road 38 times a year to race full time in Cup, that drive had left me, and to do it at the level required. And I firmly believe that I'm in it 100% or I'm not at all. And with 2 young children and life and other things that I wanted to accomplish and other experiences I wanted to have, and we made 2020 my last full-time year in Cup. I really tried to not use the word retirement. It quickly was labeled on me. And
right. It was used a lot.
It was. Yeah. And I went IndyCar racing on a limited schedule in 21, and also sports car racing, which are 2 forms of racing I've always been interested in. And as a kid, I wanted to be an IndyCar driver. So I felt very fortunate to go, one, and drive for Chip Ganassi and his very accomplished IndyCar program. But the other part of that was to go live my childhood dream finally in my mid-40s. And then the second year I did a full-time of IndyCar, full-time schedule, and then the sports car program again. And that was a 23, 24 race schedule, and the grind was there again. So I knew I wanted to slow down a bit more and try to hit the 10 to 15 race schedule, and I found a much better balance of that now. And then in addition to my driving duties, I've become a team owner in the sport as well. So I have a hard time slowing down, but I'm trying to challenge myself with new experiences, personally, professionally, and then still hanging on to the instrument I love so much, which is my race car.
And so you will drive how many events this year in Cup?
This year, there will be 9 NASCAR races that I'll run, and then I think it's 6 Extreme E races that I'll compete in, which is this really neat electric off-road racing series that races globally. And then I'll run in a handful of classic sports car races. I've been in a few of those recently and really enjoy the camaraderie of the garage area and going back in period and driving these old cars and having a sense of just how brave the drivers back then were.
Now, we were fortunate to have you in the Queen City for many years. I know you and Jeff Gordon, I remember him mentioning once, were neighbors at some point. But that's not the case now. So tell people a little bit about your living situation these days.
Charlotte's still home.
Okay.
We will return home. We've had an amazing opportunity to travel or to live abroad, and using this opportunity living in London for a year to travel and see Europe. Our kids are at a good age to do so, and it's really been an adult kind of goal and dream for my wife and I to spend a year abroad. And so we're in the middle of that now, truly enjoying our experience. And it's a bit more complicated than I thought it would be, having a business here in the States. So I'm not there as often as my family. The kids are in school there and enjoying it, but I'm back at least once a month, and I'm just trying to work through it all.
What do you fly back and forth? You fly commercially, or do you fly?
No, commercially.
Yeah.
There are 3 evening flights every day, and there's a couple morning flights to get me back to Charlotte every day, so it works out pretty nice.
You mentioned your children who are how
13 and 10 now.
Okay. That would be great ages, I would think, to travel. But what has been unique about that situation? What have you enjoyed about London?
It's a very urban city. I've spent a lot of time in New York and met my wife in New York and maintained an apartment up there for a long time. And it has the access and vibrancy that New York does, but in a much more urban setting. Accent's a little different, so it's fun to slightly be challenged culturally in that respect. But then from a car or a train or a plane, all of Europe is at our fingertips. And we've literally traveled every weekend somewhere.
Really?
If it's through England or train or plane somewhere further out. And I've had a great experience.
I spent 3 weeks one time in London covering the Olympics when they were there. And on the first day, I almost got hit by a double-decker bus. Have you had any experiences like that, or have you driven in London? Because I would think that would be difficult.
I own a car there. I am now at a point where I can switch back and forth pretty easily. And I say all that in the first day home this week. I left my neighborhood and was on the left side of the road. And one of my neighbors is driving down and just stopped and started flashing the lights and honking their horn. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Didn't stop and really explain myself, but I got on the right side of the road and then drove by.
That's neat. And so the kids are actually going to school there? You're not homeschooling. You're immersing them in
Yeah, they're there in the, just the wide variety of cultural experiences they're having through school. Our classmates are from all around the world. It's great for them. And just to live outside of the U.S., I just think to spend time or live outside of the U.S. gives you such a better perspective of the world, certainly of this country we all love so much. But it's just good. And it helps expand their mind.
I think they'll never forget that. That's awesome. But you will return to Charlotte.
Yep, Charlotte's
home.
home.
So we're glad to hear that.
Charlotte's home.
Okay, so you didn't sell your house.
Nope. We're
okay.
I'm there more than my family is at this point, but Charlotte's home.
Oh, right, because you need a home base anyway.
Exactly.
So what's the difference between being a team owner and a driver? What have you found about that that's challenging?
First off, I've raced at the best organization you can in NASCAR, Hendrick Motorsports. And Rick has a really nice way of making things look easy. And you forget just how much time he's been in the sport and how much time it takes to really assemble the group of people you need. And then not only the people, but also the funding to operate and have the access to the technology and tools and personnel that you need to be successful. So for me, I have a vision, and I think a lot of people would have a similar vision of, hey, this is what it takes to be successful. You spend this and you hire this person and do that. But then you have to go back and balance your budget, and you have to understand your funding and that aspect, and just the length of time it takes to really forge relationships with partners and to generate the revenue needed through partnership. And then also there's a lot of revenue generated by the performance on track. And our cars last year, we didn't perform as high as we would like, so we're lower on the scale of payout. And hopefully through this year, we're going to claw our way towards the top and have more revenue coming in at that point or through that manner. And it's just a slow process. So I've heard that I need to be patient, and I'm really trying to stay patient.
Let's talk a little bit about your many, many races as a driver. I wonder if you could first point out what you consider your most significant early win in your NASCAR Cup career.
I always say my first. I truly felt like I had a year to show what I was capable of, hence win a race, because I was handpicked by Jeff Gordon, and the equipment that he just won the 2001 championship with was now mine. And so in the 10th race of my rookie season, I was able to get that done and ring the bell. And the weight of the world came off my shoulders at that point, and I felt like I was going to have a job for a while.
Where was that?
It was my home track, actually, in Southern California at Fontana Speedway.
Jimmie Johnson off turn 4, 6th in points, leading rookie on the tour, and he's going to win his 13th start.
Daryl, there's nothing like that first win, is
Oh, man, what a thrill. What a thrill. Especially a 500-mile race here in California.
How about that? And let's back up for that a little bit. Tell people where you grew up and influences in your life as a child.
Yeah, I grew up in Southern California, just east of the San Diego area. My grandparents owned a motorcycle shop, and that was my introduction to motorsports. My dad raced some and then was drafted in the Vietnam War. And when he returned, thankfully, he didn't see any action. By the time he was deployed, the war was over and he was sent back home. But it sent him on a different course, and he didn't race anymore, but he was really involved with my grandparents' motorcycle shop and spent his weekends looking after clients at local tracks and really just involved in that scene. And then as I came along and have two younger brothers, as we all eventually were old enough to ride and race, that was our world. And honestly, the El Cajon area where I grew up is the mecca of motocross. It's where it really started. When you go back through the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, that's where all the world champions came from. Just an interesting, little factoid about that area, and that was my world. So all of my heroes were motocross guys growing up, and there were many twists and turns along the way that led me to four wheels, and then I was recognized or spotted by Chevrolet, and they helped guide my career through many more evolutions, and eventually ended up in North Carolina in 1997. And by 2000, I had a proper full-time effort in the Xfinity Series.
And that was partly through Jeff Gordon.
So my opportunity with Jeff came about for the 2002 season. Okay. I had raced for the Herzog family based in St. Joseph, Missouri. And Chevrolet saw them as a team that they could grow as well. So they paired an up-and-coming driver with an up-and-coming team. And we had 7 seasons together through off-road racing into various levels of stock car racing. And when Jeff spotted me and Hendrick was looking to expand to a fourth team, I got the call and moved up. And that was that 2002 season when I started with Hendrick Motorsports.
I never quite understood how that worked. So every time that yet you were competing with Jeff all the time, and he was at the top of his game. So every time you won, did he get money as an owner?
He would have, yeah. Yeah, so I'm sure he had mixed emotions. Took money out of one pocket, but put some back in the other.
We'll be back right after this. Welcome back. And when did you actually make the switch from 2 wheels to 4 wheels, from motorcycles, which I know you started with, to
I was kind of mid-teens. I really raced motocross from the age of 5 to probably 13, 14. And I was very accident prone and would always end up in the hospital after. I had some just crazy breaks and surgeries. And my parents had enough. And my dad has always been a very good mechanic. And in addition to this motorcycle world we were in, he had friends racing in off-road buggies. And so the off-road buggies were so similar to the dirt bikes. My dad's like, if we could just get a roll cage around you to keep you safe. And so through time, he was able to pull that off, and it took a year or so. And then at 15, I had my first chance at a professional race in a little buggy. And things really picked up momentum after that.
But in high school, didn't you were an athlete, right? Weren't you on the
loosely
water polo?
I played water polo and was on the swim team.
Yeah, how good were you in any of those things?
I wasn't on the varsity team, but it kept me busy. And San Diego culture has its own twists and turns as well. And our swim team was far more popular than our football team, and water polo was as well. So we had a great school, highly competitive school. And one just quick story, we were going to league finals for swim, and my swim coach came to me my junior year of high school and said, look, I know you've been doing this racing thing, but are you being paid to do it? I said, no, I'm not paid. Do you get any compensation for your performance? I said, well, yeah, there's some prize money. You get a couple $100 if we win or something. He said, I'm sorry, you can't compete. You're technically a professional athlete. I'm like, I'm not. I'm a 16-year-old kid, a junior in high school. What? And so I trained the whole year, qualified for my 2 classes, my 2 events, and then couldn't swim league finals. I was pretty bitter over that.
That's rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially because all that money, anything you won was going back into I'm sure it was a losing proposition at that point, right?
We didn't own the team. It truly was going to my bank account, but it was just, I could buy Taco Bell from me and my friends is really what it turned into at school.
It
wasn't like a real pro athlete.
That's rough.
Yeah.
The worst crash you've ever been in or would be what? What comes to mind?
Yeah, there are 2 that come to mind. Many probably have seen the Watkins Glen crash in 2000 in an Xfinity car. Had brake failure and flew off the track and was heading towards a white wall, which I assumed was a concrete wall. And thankfully it was a styrofoam wall. And that was one of 2 moments where I felt like my life was coming to an end. And it was just this bizarre calmness that came over me. And I have the impact. I look around at my body and I realize I'm conscious and I'm fine. And then I was so excited to be alive, I got out of the car and was dancing on the roof of the car. So,
whoa, something broke. Something broke in the car. Oh my God. And huge contact. 24-year-old Lion. Boy, that's amazing that he is not injured.
And then when I was racing the off-road vehicles, there's a very famous race called the Baja 1000. And every 3rd year, it starts in Tijuana and runs all the way down the Baja Peninsula to La Paz. And I literally fell asleep behind the wheel. I was trying to drive it solo and had been driving for nearly 20 hours, waiting for the sun to come up, trying to stay awake. And I nodded off, not for long, but long enough to miss a turn and went flying off. We're up in the mountains, and thankfully it wasn't too far of a drop. But as I went flying off the road, I woke up and fell for a while and just had no idea what was going to happen. So those 2 moments were the frightening ones.
How old were you in that moment?
I think I was like 19 in that one.
Oh, that's
yeah.
early.
Yeah.
So the 2000 would have been, that was before Dale Earnhardt Sr. got killed and
Correct.
Hans devices were mandated. Were you wearing one?
I was not wearing a Hans device.
The sports world lost a star Sunday. NASCAR lost a legend. Dale Earnhardt, arguably the greatest driver in his sports history, died during the running of the Daytona 500. Earnhardt, who 3 years ago won this race, was killed during the final lap when his number 3 car crashed nose first into the wall, traveling close to 180 miles per hour.
But what was really interesting is the racetrack itself chose to put softer walls, or some version of. We didn't have the softer wall really created at that point, but they had 2 massive styrofoam blocks that had to be like 8 feet long by 4 feet deep. And there were 2 of those, a row of tires, and then a metal barrier. And all of that thankfully gave way and saved me from breaking, my neck and having a basal skull fracture, which is the injury that Dale and 4 others died of that during that stretch before the Hans device came out.
Right, that terrible stretch of that really made them. Did you do anything differently after that with your life or with your racing safety, or did you, because you were known as a very consistent driver, right? Ultimately in NASCAR, I mean, you were always a top 10 kind of guy. Did you take less risks, or was it
that
just
was
the
kind
same?
of in my transition phase? My off-road team owners would say that I took too many risks and flipped their trucks way too often. But the incident that happened in Watkins Glen was a mechanical failure. And right or wrong, drivers find excuses to have whatever headspace we do, and oftentimes we don't want to admit the risk and or the mistake or whatever happened. And to me, it was a parts failure. I mean, it could happen to anybody. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm fine. Let's continue down this road. And that was also that period of time was also in an era where safety had made a couple big steps. And so there was this opinion of like, man, we're pretty good. The cars are safe and there's seatbelt technology. But what was missing was the Hans device. And unfortunately, after we lost 4 and then the 5th was Dale, soft walls and the Hans device came about and have completely changed the sport.
So that's a big difference from when you started, obviously, the safety, I guess.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. What other major differences do you think there are, at your current age versus when you first started driving a Cup car full time?
I'd say the championship, or the champion and how the champion's crowned. We now have a playoff system, and it's changed probably 4 or 5 times since my rookie year, and when we had just a system that totaled points from every weekend, and the driver with the most points at the end's a champion. And now it's far different than that.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the 5th year in a row, the champion, Jimmie Johnson.
And then I'd say the other big piece is the vehicle we're driving. And there's always been new generations of cars that have come along. It's pretty common. But now we're in a world where there's a single source provider for all the parts on the vehicle. The teams do not manufacture cars anymore. We buy parts and pieces and assemble these cars in our race shops. And, it's interesting to be in this space, but truth be told, it's a large part of why I'm now an owner. Because to compete against Mr. Hendrick or Mr. Penske or Mr. Gibbs in the manufacturing facilities they have on top of their racing facilities, there's no way I could ever do it. And so now that they've taken the manufacturing piece out, it's hit the bottom line for all teams, and it's so helpful. And that is a big part of the enterprise value that's growing for the teams. We have the charter system that's now in place, where there are 36 chartered cars out of the 40 that are on the field, and the charter values are rising. And so racing's always been a sport that it took real passion but deep pockets to go racing. And I think we're in an era now where I'm sure it still takes deep pockets, but I think there's a business model, a viable business model coming around. And, I could see the writing on the wall 2 years ago, and, now I'm in. We still have some road to cover to truly get the sport there, but the ground it's made in the last, 36 months is quite impressive.
You mentioned your daughters. And I thought I heard you say in one interview one time that one's maybe more of a risk taker than the other. And tell me about them, and do you feel like either one of them will follow you into the racing world?
I don't think from a driving standpoint, both love their horses and are fearless on their animals. I've introduced them to motorcycles and go-karts, and not a ton of interest, but watch them on their ponies and horses. They are fearless and really into it, and their competitiveness shows up. So, they have a different avenue for their passion in animals and riding, but I do see some of my DNA pop up in there at times.
Do they compete in equestrian events?
Equestrian events,
yeah.
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, aren't you a member at Quail Hollow too, or something? Am I remembering that?
Yeah.
Because I feel like Johnny Harris told me one time you were always trying to get he had the fastest golf cart out there or something.
Luckily, when I show up with my bag, they are kind enough to give me Johnny's golf cart. But now the new fastest golf cart is Davis Love's golf cart that was left over from the President's Cup. And that thing's dangerous.
Really?
I mean, it is way too fast.
How fast can it go?
Faster than you want to go without a seatbelt in an armor-all seat. I mean, you make the turns and your rear end sliding across the seat.
This episode will run shortly before the Coca-Cola 600. What makes that race unique? And you've had some success in it. Why do you think that's done well for you? The
history that Charlotte and that Speedway and the Smith family has with NASCAR and the great promotions, Humpy Wheeler in his days of promoting and all the wild things that would go on, the track has its own personality because of all of that. So I think it's been a huge draw. Clearly it's the longest race on the schedule. And then for me, stylistically as a driver, the longer the race, the better I do. And with that being the longest race, fits me well. And for a long time, the track surface was a huge challenge on the circuit. It was really bumpy, which we like to say gives track character. And, during that era of time where it was the most difficult track to compete on, it fit my off-road racing background. And I was able to win quite a few races at the track, from all-star events to 600s, then also the October event that used to take place on the Oval.
He's not going to be able to do it, I don't think. They're side by side. Here he comes. Jimmie Johnson got it. 48 car. He did it. 3 in a row, Jimmie Johnson. By 2/100ths of a second.
So it's a track I have a lot of fond memories of. Very happy to be back racing at the 600 again. And then there's nothing like racing at home, to have friends come out. And now my kids are at the age where they can invite their friends to come out as well. So it's really nice.
No, that's neat. Wanted to ask you a little bit about, it seems to me like you would be such a natural on TV. Is that something you've ever pursued or want to pursue, or have you gone in this ownership direction, or have your own podcast or whatever? A lot of other famous current and former race car drivers seem to enjoy. What's your take on that stuff?
I've dabbled in all the spaces at different times. I consume, some TV. I consume a ton of podcasts and audiobooks and stuff. But I know the amount of work that goes into doing it right. And I just have a great deal of respect for that. And I have not had the available headspace or bandwidth to do it. And, I've really enjoyed being in the car the most. And I kind of thought that I would maybe move into that space, in 23 or 24. But this team owner opportunity came along. But I've had the thought, and I love the content that's out there, and to do it right, like I would want to engage. Again, I just don't have the bandwidth to do it.
When you go to different places in Europe, are you an art guy? I know your wife is a successful art gallery owner, right? What surprises you about Europe, and in the many different ways that it is from America?
Yeah, it's wild. As I age, I'm much more interested in history. I'd say in my 20s, when Shani and I first started traveling, I was more concerned about where we were eating and what pool or body of water we were swimming in. The stuff that happened in between wasn't a big deal. And with her love of art, we're always seeing something and experiencing something. And I do have a passion for it. We do like to collect together. But her passion for art is like my passion for race cars and tracks. So, we find a happy medium in how to make that all work, and we'll see some art and have some great food and go for a swim. So it's a great balance.
One of the great Jimmie Johnson stories was in 2006, I think, where speaking of water reminded me of it. But when you were, I think at one point you said surfing on top of a golf cart. Tell me a little bit about that.
It was a failed attempt. Surfing on top of a golf cart. It seemed like a great idea until I needed to get off the top of the golf cart. And it just so happens that the plastic cleats on my shoes do not get much traction on the plastic rooftop of the golf cart. So as I tried to get off, I came off, but it wasn't very, very graceful, and landed and had to catch myself and broke my left wrist.
And managed to, did you miss any races? I can't remember now.
No,
it was off season, right?
It was off season.
Yeah.
I came down to Daytona testing and had to wear a splint. And then I think I wore a splint kind of through speed weeks, just protecting it. And then race day, I had it off and was back to normal. So it didn't impact my driving at all.
And you were had you won one championship at that time?
That was the first one, yeah. 06 was the first one.
First one. And if I remember, you didn't exactly admit it right away, right? That what you just said actually was what happened.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to just come out and say straight away. Looking back, wish I would have been fully transparent, but we released a statement that said I fell that I fell out of a golf cart. Right. Then there was a Good Samaritan that was there and decided to report to the AP that I wasn't necessarily in the golf cart. I was on the golf cart. So the world's a better place because of this individual.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Okay. Is that how that all shook out? All right. Okay. And so then from then on, you just decided to come clean.
There's really no going back at that point. So,
right.
And just so the world doesn't feel deceived, I told my wife as well that I fell out of the golf cart.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So had a lot of explaining to do next week.
Well, that's a good story to tell your kids.
Yeah.
When you're trying to give them do as I say, not as I do sort of advice and
Correct.
stuff. What is your style as a father? I know you're an engaged one.
I guess the way I was raised was in a household full of love and in a sense kind of letting your imagination go and dreaming of what you want to do, what you want to be. And my parents absolutely did not have the means to support these, the imagination that I had and my brothers did. But, through hard work and determination, it's worked out for me. And my brothers have both ended up in really good places in their lives as well. We have more to give our kids from a starting point standpoint. And I just want to encourage them to chase their passion. And that's really what we're doing as parents. I'm probably on some subjects a bit more strict than my wife is. We kind of share that responsibility and what we're more strict about. But I think we have a household full of love, and we truly love being together and love spending a lot of time together.
Y'all have gone through a terrible tragedy in the past year or so.
This is the Oklahoma home of Jack and Terry Janway, the in-laws of 7-time NASCAR Cup champ Jimmie Johnson, and the location of a heartbreaking murder-suicide. Police believe Terry Janway made the initial 911 call and then shot and killed her husband and grandson before taking her own life. Terry and Jack Janway were the parents of Jimmie Johnson's wife, Chandra.
My condolences on that, and how have y'all coped?
Well, thank you. We're managing the best we can, and thankful for professional help, thankful for friends, family, love, support. There's no way that we could get through this alone, and certainly for my wife. So it's been as difficult as anyone could imagine, and love and support has been what's really guided us through it.
Professional help, you say, has really been a key as well.
It has. It's quite amazing the relief that brings, and it takes constant work, and I think we'll have to continue to work on it through a large part of our lives, if not forever. But being concerned about our daughters and just making sure everybody's in a good place about it. The love that's been shown to us has been phenomenal. We've covered a lot of ground, and it's been less than a year. It's crazy.
We'll be back right after this. Welcome back. Yeah, on a different subject, you just made the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
God, what an experience, and shared so many current Hall of Fame members said that the moment's going to get real. I think it just happened. Yeah.
Congratulations on that. I know you knew it was coming. Did anything surprise you about that weekend, and what touched you about that weekend?
I would say the reunion, the Hendrick Motorsports reunion that took place. I knew I would see old friends, and certainly at the ceremony itself, I did. And then I had an after party where I tried. I'm sure we left some people out, but we really tried to get everyone there through the 19 years that I was at Hendrick, and certainly the people that were on the 48 team. And the party stopped at 2. I didn't leave till 3:30 when they were literally moving these scissor machines around, taking down banners and stuff in the room. And it's not that it was some wild night. It was just we couldn't stop reliving the old days and just telling stories. And we just had a huge group of people standing around sharing stories. It was awesome.
That I don't know if I've ever asked you, but the 48 number, was that significant in some way? How'd you end up with that?
The number 4 and 8 have been through my life, and every time I had that number plate, if it was an off-road truck, my ASA car, motorcycles, it always led to a championship or something significant. And as we were picking the number for the car, it stood out to me. I think the team had a few other numbers in mind, and once I made my suggestion and the reasons behind it, they drew the parallel of, well, Jeff Gordon's in the 24, this is 48. All right, let's go with it. And off we went.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Jimmie Johnson, it's just been a wonderful pleasure to have you on Sports Legends of the Carolinas.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Sports Legends of the Carolinas, a production of the Charlotte Observer. This show is produced by Lume Ali Sally, Jeff Seiner, and Cotta Stevens. The sports editor of the Charlotte Observer is Lydia Craver. The executive editor is Raina Cash. If you know a sports fan, we've got a great gift idea for you. We've compiled the first 2 seasons of the Sports Legends interviews into a coffee table book, which includes more than 100 rare photos. Among the 33 legends in the book are Steph Curry, Roy Williams, Mike Krzyzewski, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Steve Spurrier, Jake Delhomme, and Dawn Staley. The first printing sold out quickly, but the book is back in stock now, and you can order a copy at sportslegendsbook.com. For lots more sports content, please visit charlotteobserver.com and consider a digital subscription. You can connect with me, Scott Fowler, by email at sfowler@charlotteobserver.com. Please subscribe, rate, and review the Sports Legends of the Carolinas podcast. Thanks for spending some time with us, and we'll see you next time.